Chris, welcome. We are thrilled to have our integration partners at Socially sponsoring today's event. And I'm so excited to welcome Chris Sellers from Socially and two very special guests from ATP Tour and the Pittsburgh Steelers, so they can join us as well. Chris, welcome. We're thrilled to have you, and we can't wait for this conversation about amplifying your brand story. Thanks for being here.
No worries at all. Thank you for having us. And yeah, we're delighted to be partnered with the event. It's been amazing to listen in so far and hear about all the great stories that people have. So I guess what I'm thrilled to do is I'm so delighted to have Carl Rosa and Lulu Rowlands from Pittsburgh Steelers and ATP Tour with us. The guys are giving up an amazing amount of time. Lulu, you guys are right in the middle of the NITO ATP Tour finals, and Carl, you're obviously gearing up to try and go 10-0 this weekend. So really appreciate you guys giving up your time today. I guess what we're keen to do is, I guess, give you guys a bit of background for everyone on the stream, because you probably aren't familiar with the brand Socially. You're obviously familiar with PhotoShelter, but I was obviously just super keen to give you guys a bit of a viewpoint of what's going on at the moment. So Socially as a brand, we're obviously here to, you've heard about from Kim, 95% of that content not going out and kind of getting lost. But what we're here to do is to provide you with a platform to get that content out to your brand ambassadors and make the most of it. So what we do is our platform enables you to really get that power of the ROI. And what we mean by that is to make sure that all that content that's being gathered and created is getting distributed out to your brand ambassadors. And what I'd encourage everyone to do on the stream is to maybe think about who your brand ambassadors are, because here we're talking about athletes from the Pittsburgh Steelers on the ATP Tour, but for you, it may not be athletes. It may be obviously college athletes, or it may be celebrity influencers, or even your own internal staff. Everyone's passionate about your brand in some way, shape, or form. So I'll just encourage you all to have a think about who your brand ambassadors are. In terms of what Socially is and does, as it says here, like, we help you get your amazing content, and we've heard from so many people already today about all their brilliant content, but we want to help you get it on the right channels and at the right time. So what that enables you to do is connect with your athletes, your superstars of your brand, and enable them, give them the power to share that brilliant content, whether it's graphical content, video content, or that incredible photography that's being created. But what does that mean for you guys as brands? I think what it means is that reach and growth, that a further engagement with your fans, because we do see that athletes have far greater engagement with audiences, and also it might enable you to generate some new fans and a greater audience as well. So those are some key things, and we deliver that through a nice, easy to use platform. But I'll allow the guys later to talk about that. And in terms of the numbers, I guess it's great to talk about that, because what does it typically mean for you when you're trying to get your content out there? We typically see with our customers that by engaging with their kind of stakeholders, their ambassadors, their influencers, anyone who advocates their brand, we're typically seeing a 13x increase in their reach, which is an incredible number. So we're helping brands to see beyond just their owned and operated channels. It's great to post fantastic content on your own channels, but there's only so much you can post out on social, on your own channels. So why not give it to your power users, your powerful influencers who also want to talk about your brand? And by using a content distribution platform, you can obviously use a lot more of your content. So we're seeing sort of 60% plus growth in the amount of content that you can use and distribute to your network. So those are just some high level numbers. But obviously what brings us here today is the partnership with PhotoShelter. I think Kristen or Yoav, you mentioned at the start of the day, that powerful integration that we've got with you, and it is a long-standing relationship. It was actually the first ever integration that Socially did with a digital asset management platform. So we're super excited and happy to be here and partner on the event. And hopefully you'll hear from some good stories and the reality from Lulu and Carl on what it means to do real-time content distribution, that automated delivery, and how they can get thousands of pieces of content out to their athletes in an easy and automated way. So with that being said, I'll throw over to the guys so you can listen to them. Lulu, do you want to kick us off and showcase, I guess, the amazing work that you guys have been doing in 2020? And yeah, talk us about your workflow, because I think everyone likes to see a workflow diagram thrown in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much, Chris, and thanks PhotoShelter for hosting a great summit today. So as some background, the ATP Tour is the governing body of men's professional tennis around the world. I work in the Director of Member Services. So the Member Services Department is, the primary goal is servicing its members. So we have our players and our tournaments. Our tournaments around the world, and our up-and-coming players, our current players and our former players. We need to make sure that they have the right services, support, skills, benefits they need to help them through their journey as a player on and off the court. And obviously a big part of that in today's world is the social media aspect. How can we make sure that they're getting the right content, they're able to engage as players, as tournaments, with their fans, with their prospective and current sponsors around the world. So that's kind of what I want to talk about today in terms of where socially then comes in that picture. So on the tour, we have we service roughly 500 players. They're all independent contractors competing across singles and doubles throughout the year. We have 64 tournaments in 31 countries across 6 continents over most of the year. So I wanted to kind of use these numbers to give you an idea of the scale of what we're looking at. So obviously our tournaments, our players are all in very different time zones. They're all wanting content. They want to get it out to their fans as quickly as they can. So whilst it's a huge asset having the tour being as global as it is, it also presents many challenges. So that's a bit about the tour. So obviously our players are wanting to get their post as much as they can around the world, and we want them to be able to tell the story in their own eyes. So whilst there's journalists, whilst there's our channels that are posting themselves, obviously our players have a huge following. They have more following than any other anyone in the tennis ecosystem. So we obviously want to be able to provide them with the content that they need. So this was Novak only a couple of days ago being presented with his year-end #1 trophy that he posted. This was Dominic Thiem when he won the US Open, obviously very quick to post about his winning performance. And this was a good example of the ATP Tour and the Grand Slams coming together to provide content through socially for our players to access and our tournaments to leverage. So obviously during the last few months, there have been many challenges from a COVID perspective. There have been very limited people allowed on site, very limited people allowed to travel, which at the US Open, we weren't able to have, for instance, our photographers on the ground. So we worked with the US Open to leverage their photography and get that into the hands of our players. And they were able to use that through socially. And coupled with that, obviously, there were no fans on site. So our players were desperate to be able to tell their story, speak to the fans as close as they could possibly be without obviously them being on site. And our tournaments at the same time are desperate to be able to speak to their fans in different ways because they don't have the capacity with the fans being on site this year. So obviously it's been kind of more needed than ever for our players and tournaments to be able to talk to their fans through social media. And obviously in terms of using photography during our tournaments, this was an example at the beginning of the year during the bushfire devastation in Australia when Nick Kyrgios was using our photography to kind of use his voice to speak out and encourage others to do the same about the devastation that was going on. So if I give you some background about how that translates, so obviously I showed you how the kind of end goal of the players posting. So to give you some background about how we get there, obviously it all starts with the photography being captured on the ground at our various tournaments around the world. So we work with our individual tournaments. They're all independent businesses around the world. We work with their photographer, team of photographers there who capture the photographs. They're uploading during their tournament via FTP to PhotoShelter, of course, and that's where all the photos from across the tour are stored. Those photos that are in PhotoShelter have the metadata applied. Our tournaments do add that before they upload And once in PhotoShelter, that allows our teams internally to use those photos for various editorial purposes, our website, our social media channels. As soon as they hit PhotoShelter, because of that fantastic integration between PhotoShelter and Socially, those photos flow straight through to Socially. And since the metadata is applied automatically, that then means that the players mentioned in that metadata get that notification. It goes straight to their Socially accounts. If that metadata isn't applied, then we do have the facial recognition feature so that those players can be tagged and alerted automatically, even if that the metadata wasn't there. In addition to PhotoShelter, through Socially, our players are also able to pull photos from Getty Images, which is a great resource. So if for any reason the photos aren't there that the player needs post-match or for any other purpose, then they've got the Getty Image library to lean on, which has been fantastic. So as I say, once those photos are in Socially, our players are then alerted. They go straight to Socially and they're able to post them out to the world through their social media channels. We always make sure that when they go to post, the tournament, the photographer's credit handles are all there. So it's very easy for players to make sure that they're able to spread the tournament's kind of message, logos, handles far and wide around the world, which is super important for our tournaments. And then, yeah, so once they're obviously in Socially, those photos, as well as being able to be posted immediately, are then added to the players' archives, and I'll touch on that a bit later. And then to close the loop, so the data, because it all is coming from Socially, whenever a player posts, we do see that data. We see when players post, what they post, all of the analytics, and we're able to group that together and provide our tournaments with that information. And it provides obviously much greater visibility than any of us had before when we were sending content to players via WhatsApp, via text, via email. We didn't know how those photos were being used, so now we can see how they're being used, and we can get that data. So it really gives our tournaments the return on investment from obviously high quality photography and spending time uploading their photos. So just a bit of background as to how that process works. So in addition to tournaments providing photography, we also use data analytics. So actually going back to the obviously closing the loop in terms of the data, this is a quick snapshot of the kind of data that we see from a tournament. So this is an example from a tournament a few weeks ago, and in terms of the data that we saw throughout the tournament of what players were doing with the content that was coming in. So we were able to share just under 5,000 pieces of content with our players throughout the week. Of those, just over 250 were posted. So just as some background, we do share a lot of content, and our players like to kind of scroll through, look through sometimes 20 photos of their match, and then pick the right ones that best suit how they feel after their match. So that number could be much higher, but we like to be able to get a lot of content to our players for them to choose. And then looking at the kind of number of players, obviously we are dealing with a lot of players at our tournament, so there were 159 different players that received content, and bearing in mind half of the players in the draw would have lost in that first round, we were pretty pleased that close to 90 players actually posted some of that content, and obviously then that accumulates with the impressions and the reach. So our tournaments are very happy with these numbers. It goes much further than it would do if it was just on their channels. So going back to where so I was referring to in terms of, obviously our tournaments are sharing content with our players, but we also use PhotoShelter and Socially to share our content with our players at various milestones throughout their careers. So this is last year when Stefanos Tsitsipas won the NITO ATP finals. We were able to share a really cool ATP branded graphic with him that he posted straight after his win. This is a few months ago when the Bob and Mike Bryan retired. We shared a few graphics with our players, key moments with some players and Bob and Mike throughout their careers, and a lot of our players posted around the world about special memories and times that they had with Bob and Mike. So that was a really special moment, and a great that we could use PhotoShelter and Socially to get that out there to all of our players in one hit. This is our year-end awards. So we used PhotoShelter, Socially to for our players to announce that they were nominated for our year-end awards. So rather than it coming from us, the players could be the ones that were actually the ones to make that announcement on their channels. And then lastly, and I touched on that earlier, so our player archives, obviously Socially through our tournaments, through things we share, it's in real time, it's talking about their performance that week, the end of the week, but actually one of the biggest assets is that it provides an archive for our players to lean on whenever they like in the future. So going back to when Bob and Mike Bryan retired earlier this year, they scrolled through Socially and found some key photos from throughout their career that they then used to create a montage on their social channels when they retired. And then a couple more examples. So at one of the Greece national holidays recently, we have an annual photo shoot where our players go through a series of photos, and Stefanos used one of the photo shoot photos there to celebrate his country's national holiday. And then a few months ago, obviously when Wimbledon was unfortunately cancelled for the year, a lot of our players took to Socially to find photos from Wimbledon from the year before to post how sad they were that it wouldn't be taking place. So it really gives the opportunity for players, even former players, as players retire, to always have that resource to rely on going forward, which is something that is really special. So yeah, that's just a snapshot of how we've been using PhotoShelter and then the integration with Socially. Ultimately, it's created the ability for us in terms of how our tour is laid out to get a lot of tournaments being able to provide content to a lot of players in real time. I think we've laid some really good foundations this year. Our players are really happy, our tournaments are really happy in terms of how that content has been flowing. So we're really excited now to be able to build on that. Now we've got our workflow and our processes near enough automated to do much more in 2021. So thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lulu. It's great to see the amazing and diverse way you're using all your content. And it's obviously great that you get all the analytics for your reporting and providing that justification and great value add to the tournaments as well. Brilliant. Well, thanks for that, Carl. Let's move on to you. I know you've got some brilliant imagery coming up. Yeah, I guess as manager of photography and team photographer for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I'm sure there's lots of people interested to see what goes on in your week-to-week, day-to-day life. So why don't you kick it off and yeah, look forward to it.
Sure. Thank you, Chris, and thanks for having me be a guest today. And I'm excited to see the rest of the day and the other speakers as well. So a little bit about myself. I'm the manager of photography and the team photographer at the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I've been doing this for a little bit over 12 years now. Some of the things that I do include covering all of the team's events, home and away games, practices, community events, studio shoots, and a whole lot more. I kind of oversee all of the creation and the acquisition and really the development of the photography for all of the organization. I also maintain a rather large archive of over 80 years of the Steelers history. So we have everything from prints and negatives that are all stored, and we have been working to digitize and make available to us over the years. And so a bit about Socially and our integrations with them. We had a former player, Ryan Clark, if you don't know him, is one of our former players who tweeted about a week and a half ago, and he had called out to some of the NFL players asking how are they getting the photos so quickly following games. And Joe Hayden tweets back at him, and it basically says, you know, I'm delivering the photos to him, you know, before he even gets to his locker as he's walking in the stadium. He has a ton of photos, and you can just tell from these tweets, you know, how jealous Ryan Clark is, and how excited Joe Hayden really is with all of this, and being able to get photos and share those through real time. So a bit about that delivery of images, and you know where we were when we had our images and how we were delivering them to Ryan Clark, and where we're going, and what we've been doing with our delivery of images to Joe Hayden is really described as in the past, what we have done is I had to individually respond to each of the players' requests through text messages, through emails, through DMs, and had to find the images following the game and then upload it to each of them individually. And it was a huge task, and it was very time consuming, as you can imagine. Part of part of that was I was looking for new solutions and ways for me to take care of that heavy lifting, and that's when I came across Socially. So it was important for me to kind of because we're such a small staff here at the Pittsburgh Steelers for the photo department, it being myself and a photo intern, it was important for me to save on my time and to turn these images around to not just our internal departments in real time, but also all of the players, to free me up to allow me to photograph instead of working through images and sending them out. So part of my workflow and how things have been organized over the last few years is kind of reflected here in this workflow chart. And really, you can follow the path of the orange and red arrows through this, and it really takes you from the photographer, being myself or whoever else we have hired for the event, and they transmit in real time using mobile hotspots through their camera to our server, and the photo editor there receives it, adds captions and metadata and keywords, and then moves those to PhotoShelter. And what we've done is we were able to use Socially to integrate into certain folders that we wanted to be identified for it to recognize that metadata and to text it straight to the players. And from there, we've also automated the photo credit and the Steelers social handles to be included as a suggestion for the player, so they could include them also in the conversation when they post it. So I think a bit of why why I'm using Socially is pretty apparent in that it allows me and frees up a lot of my time, but more so, I think some of the things that aren't maybe noticeable is I've noticed it gets more engagement. It allows me to be more engaged with the players. The players are excited about it, as you can see through the tweets from Joe Hayden. They are communicating with me in advance of game day, asking me for certain shots or talking about what they're hoping me to actually photograph. And so you can see that excitement is generated through them being able to receive those and really capitalize on that the emotional impact of that image. And so when they're shared in real time, the players are excited about it, and so is their fan base. And that also translates to our own the Steelers brand as well, because there's so many fans that follow athletes that don't follow the Steelers brand, and so that just creates more of a conversation that allows us to be engaged on. And it really creates a return, more of a return on our investment. And so, and what I mean by that is that there are so many images that we as a team don't necessarily use, and so those images end up being archived and just sitting there. And so when we're pushing them out, it gives more opportunities for us to use them in other ways that we might not have been able to. And so that really kind of concludes my presentation. And I wanted to throw it back over to you, Chris. Thank you.
Cheers, Carl. It's amazing to see, and it's great that you're both maximising the use of your content. I think as we're here, it's a 2021 Vision Summit. I think we have to talk about what's coming up for you guys. You're obviously doing a great job now. You've had your challenges in 2020 and seemingly overcome them very well. But yeah, what's coming up in 2021 for you guys? Carl, you're on a roll, so let's throw it back to you. What are your next steps with your content, your photography? Where are you taking it next on your next stage of your development?
Sure. So much of what I was kind of expressing as far as our historical archive, we're looking to expand that and continually digitize it, move it into PhotoShelter, and then really use socially and get some of our alumni who are social media users, like Ryan Clark, and get them onboarded with socially, so we can share those images with them and keep them engaged with the photos that we have there. I know, like Kimberly Morgan had mentioned in the previous session, the photos, does a photo exist if it's if you can't find it? And no, it doesn't. So we want to make those readily available so we can leverage them and allow our players to leverage them so that it will keep them engaged with us and us with them.
Nice. Well, I look forward to seeing Ryan Clark's Twitter feed fill up with loads of your images, so that's good. And Lulu, what about you guys? What can we expect to see in 2021 with your content distribution?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. So I think we've done a really good job building out the ability to share content with our players. So a big part of what we'd like to do is expand beyond the players to the tennis ecosystem and use various stakeholders in tennis to share the story and the brand and the story of the ATP. So we're looking at our sponsors, our media partners, of course our tournaments, and various others that we'd like to use to leverage to share our content with. I think now we've created something that, as I referenced, is scalable. It is automated, so we've got really good foundations now to expand beyond our player base, and also to we're looking at our lower league, our Challenger Tour, and our up and coming players. Obviously, as they come through, can we provide them with content and expertise at an earlier stage than we're doing now? So yeah, whilst we're happy where we are, we've got a lot of work to do, which we're excited for.